Hey guys, welcome to After Hours with Jimmy Thistle. Are we going to keep calling you guys Hourlings? Is that picking up? I don't know. I'm going to keep saying it anyway. Today, I've just had an amazing, incredible conversation with a good old friend of mine, George. I first met George in the rooms at NA or CA, one of the two, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. George, again, like me, was had an alcohol problem. I think he dabbled in drugs, but it was mainly the alcohol that was the issue, as you'll find out from the conversation. George joined the meetings. I think we worked out like basically 2 months after I got sober was when he got sober, on the 17th of October 2020. So, I've known George pretty much the entirety of our journey so far. So, through circumstances in life, and we've not kind of grown apart. We just haven't seen each other. So it was fantastic to have him round in real life in the cottage this morning, to kind of hear his story. And it's an incredible story. So, I'm not really going to say much more about it at this point. I want you to listen for the similarities. So for now, let's hear from George. How's the coffee? You tried it yet?
Oh, yeah.
We just...
Oh,
is that good?
That's fine.
So, George, welcome to After Hours with Jimmy Thistle, mate. How are you today?
I'm very good, Jimmy. Yeah, thank you for having me down.
Yeah, no, it's been a while since we've seen each other. We obviously used to go to NACA very regularly. So your recovery date, what is it again?
The 17th of October.
So and that was 2020, wasn't it?
That was 2020.
So you're literally like 2 months just behind me. So we obviously met right at the kind of during COVID lockdowns and all of that. And do you know what I mean? To me, it was an amazing time because the group was so kind of small at that time. We needed the militant kind of structure that I suppose the fellowship in NA had. But we'll get to that. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you grew up? I'm guessing you are a Manx man. I'm not guessing that. I know you're a Manxman with Italian kind of heritage.
Correct.
Well.
Yeah.
I'm remembering.
Very
man.
good memory, Jimmy.
So tell us, about your kind of upbringing, and then when you had your first drink. And we'll take it from there.
So, like you say, born and raised on the Isle of Man. With you're quite rightly, and with Italian twist to the family. So we've got I've got an Italian grandmother, so my dad's half Italian, so we've got a lot of Italian roots in there. And I had a very, very like sort of normal upbringing, very sort of happy childhood. Everything was pretty peachy. Mm-hmm. Obviously the usual stuff you have with teenage years and all that stuff and everything. I had really a good group of mates, and things were on the Isle of Man, just a nice sort of very laid back sort of upbringing. Mm-hmm. But like you say, once probably hit around, I think it was around about 14, 15, mm-hmm. like everybody.
It's
like,
the classic age. I was 14, people I speak to, it always seems to be about 14, 15.
And it's just what you did. Like, so we all, I remember the first time I got like, really drunk was when we had a camp out at a football pitch near our house, which I will not identify because I don't think we left it in the greatest state afterwards. But I remember bringing, I took the only booze I could really find in the house was a couple of bottles of red wine, so I took that. And then we just drank all night. It was, I'd say, loved it. It was amazing because it's the first time you ever do it. You're away from your mum and dad's. You're there with the lads, and it was that was the start. That was God saying many moons ago now.
Yeah. And so, like, how did that after that, how did it kind of develop maybe through your kind of late teens, and how was school, and did you go to college and things like that?
So like say school was good when Again, like very much a normal teenager over here, sort of, you do parties and go out and whatnot, and like I said, then I went to university, went to Huddersfield for 3 years, did sports journalism.
Nice.
And again, like this was back in the days when we were the last of that generation where the uni fees were cheap. Well, on the Isle of Man were nil.
Right.
So it used to be paid. So there wasn't that incentive of it. Basically, the first 2 years was a complete piss up, and that's all it was. Which is kind of similar now, but there's a lot more financially at stake. So I do think there's probably a bit of a shift in like uni students and that mentality of it. Where for us, it was still. I mean, we were out 4 or 5 times a week, maybe. Whatever you could make a £10 stretch on a night out, and £1 in and everything,
And I guess, like, from my days as well, and I went to uni a bit later, but obviously when I was at college, when I was, the same age as you went there, we had the whole Freshers Week, and it was just encouraged, and you'd get, like, all of these, I don't know, like, free passes and like, vouchers off for clubs and beers, and then it was like, what was it, like, £1 a pint? I'm sure
we had one place, it was called, in Tokyo and Huddersfield, it was 1p entry on a Tuesday, 1p entry, £1 drinks. So if you had £10, and this was including doubles and trebles, so you could absolutely blitzkrieg for the rest of the night, and you barely break a fiver. So there was the whole sort of setup for it was, a lot of it was geared around that. Yeah. Then you used to have these things called carnages, which I'm not sure they still do, because I know that they always used to be on the front of like the Sun or the Star, because it would just be like, uni students, and we flashing like pictures of Manchester, Bristol, and all that stuff, and like everybody just lying across the street and everything. And it was just better. It was like last days of Rome, it really was just carnage, literally. So then after that, sort of graduated from uni, and then I came back over here, and then again, the one thing that I could always like, I was always, I say good at, I could drink huge amount, like a bottomless pit. Don't get me wrong, I'd be hammered, and it wouldn't be one of the ones where I wouldn't show it. I'd show it, but it would just be a bottomless pit. It would just keep going and going and going. And I knew, and even from the earliest days, that was something that I would be able to do. So I could get through, I'd say pre-drinks, I could do 2 bottles of wine and then go out and then everything. And then, like, basically when you're 18, 19, which again, like, doesn't seem that much, but then when you go out and then you're having trebles, doubles, everything all night out till, and then you're doing it again the next, and you start to build up that thing of that's just normal. I remember, because my mum and dad never really been huge drinkers. I always remember my dad saying, like, you've got to be careful, like binge drinking, you've got to, you don't want to start going down that thing, because if anything can happen, choking your own sick or any, and all these things are very, very realistic and everything. But again, when you're young, you don't listen to that. You think, oh, it's fine. You know best. You have that invincibility. Yeah. And then, like, sort of came back over here, and then, like, started the job that I'm in now and everything. And at first, because when I came back, I'd got a degree in sports journalism. I tried to get into journalism for about a year. Didn't really get anywhere with that. So I was working with my dad on the building site. So again, like, I didn't really have that much structure. So again, I could sort of, just get whatever money I'd have, I'd just piss up the wall. And then, like you say, but to be fair, like most people my age, that was just the commonplace of thing to do.
And what was, like working on a building site, and not to stereotype anything at all, but I've done a bit of kind of that type of work in the past, and it is a case of you're making good money, and then it's like it gets to the end of the day, or Friday night, Saturday night, and it's like that's what you did. You went down the pub with the lads as well.
I mean, it was slightly different for me because I was just it was just me and my dad.
Right,
so
right,
a lot
okay.
Of it, but it was one of the ones where. But I was living at home, so I'd get the money. I'd have no real rent to worry about. So whatever, that was just beer money, whatever. Just spend it all.
And we're not thinking about saving in those days, are we?
No,
saving for the future, and I'm going to buy a house. There are people that do that though, and I was like,
squirrel away now.
Why have I not been kind of, and I love to blame other people, but it was my own fault for it. I was like, living for the weekend. That song by
Hi-Fi, I think
That
it
was
is.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. I loved going out. I loved going to like the Outback, the Courthouse, which are the places to be at the time on the island. We used to flitter in between there, and then obviously play. My football club. We used to just go to the Manx Arms after games.
Yeah.
You could stay there all night. And like say, my relationship with it was all at that point all positive. And in terms of where like my experience with everything was like happy days. This life of the party, have a laugh. You'd get into you'd get into things where bit of drama and night out, whatever, but you didn't have that sort of maybe not like the hindsight to realise what the consequences were, or the consequences weren't really hitting at that point because you could still chalk it off to being young, stupid, whatever. And then I probably first started noticing though, if I'm on it, when it started becoming a bit of a problem, probably about the age of 24, 25. So I was in a relationship at the time, and like I say, wasn't going particularly well at that part. And then I always remember one night we'd fell out earlier in the day. I'd gone out later that night, and then anyway we bumped into each other again. But instead of I don't know, the smart thing would have been keep the head down and just sort of apologise, do the gentleman thing. Well, I didn't do that. I just went out and I just got on the lash for the night. And then met up again, just another argument. And then from there, just a complete blackout then. Because I remember just go back to the bar, be fine. And then the next thing I remember was waking up and I saw the hospital ceiling tiles. And I had no recollection of how I got there, when I got there, what happened. And then so I woke up, I looked over, I had an IV drip coming out of my arm, and I was like, Jesus, this is heavy. And then
had you blacked out ever before this? Had you ever woken up and gone, I don't know what I did last night, or was this?
I'd blacked out before.
Yeah.
I'd blacked out before, but I'd always have someone, I'd have someone to look after me.
Yeah.
Or it'd be one of them ones where I'd black out, but like I'd somehow end up home. So in my world, that was like, well, that's okay because I thought everyone just that's normal. You black out. It's one of them ones, blackout drunk and all that stuff. But okay, that's happened. Keep calm, carry on.
And with me, I was quite proud about that because I was like, but I always managed to get myself home. I've got this like homing beacon or whatever. It's so, I black out, but I wake up in my bed, maybe fully clothed and maybe a bit of sore head, but like I've made it home.
I was like a house cat. I could work my way back, no matter where it was. I'd work it out in the end.
Yeah.
But this, I woke up and I was like, oh my, like what's happened? I'd looked down on my jeans. There was blood, and I don't know at this point whether that's mine, it's somebody else's. So I'm panicking at this point, thinking, what the hell's happened? I don't know if there's a couple of coppers standing outside the hospital room or anything like that. I have no idea what's
no cuffs on you though at this
point. No, nothing like
just
that.
Just the drip.
Yeah, and a very fuzzy head.
Yeah, and the drip's kind of concerning enough.
This is it. So I managed to sort of take the drip out myself, which I wouldn't recommend doing.
No.
And then managed to wander through and I found somebody and just asked them like, what happened, how did I get here, who am I, and all this stuff, like where have I come from.
And is this in the morning or still at night?
In the morning.
Yeah.
And then they sort of explained that I came in an ambulance, which I was like, what? I had no recollection of that whatsoever. I said, who did I even come in with? So I came in with a friend who'd found us, and I was like, I didn't even remember like seeing that person up to that point. So all of that was right. Okay, this is freaking me out. But then sort of went into and the weirdest thing is because I've always been a bit of a like I find the light side of it, and weirdly in my head I thought I'm really scared, but at the same time I was like, it's a story in this. I thought I wasn't quite sinking in of quite how serious it was. I didn't quite want to think about it that much. And then I got my mate to pick me up, and I think I actually went out for a bit of lunch afterwards, and sort of again, I sort of managed to just shovel a couple of chips down my face, whatever I could, sort of thing, and not really thinking of, okay, this is what's going on. I got dropped off back at my mum and dad's, and I still had like the plaster on my arm and everything,
and how was that with the parents? Because they would maybe a bit obviously worried that you hadn't come home and maybe not answering your mobile.
Yeah, they thought I was an idiot basically at that point. I think it was one of the ones where it was like that disappointment wasn't like a screaming match or anything that. Then, but it was more, what are you doing? Like, what are you playing at, sort of thing. I could justify it because I was like, well, I had a bad night and all this stuff, and these things happen. I'm alive now. I'm all right and everything and the thing. But I remember going back to my room thinking, oh my God, who's saw me? Because speaking to my friend who came with me in the ambulance, what happened was I wandered away from the courthouse. I had a note, don't remember leaving. And then I bumped into a couple of people that I knew, a mutual friend who came with me. And I was chatting to them. And the next thing, started projectile vomiting everywhere in the street and then passed out. And they luckily called an ambulance for me because, again, I don't know what would have happened at that point. I don't know what time it was. I don't know who was around with and everything. So that big memory blank was quite frightening. Well, very frightening at that point.
Yeah.
And then I met up with my girlfriend at the time, and sort of, where were you, sort of thing. And I was like, I tried to ad-lib it, but then again with a drunken head, still had the plaster on my arm. So she's like, you were at hospital, weren't you? And I was like, no. And then I got a riot act read to me at that point, which rightly so, because basically, sort your shit out. This is getting ridiculous.
This is not what I want in a relationship.
Which fair enough.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, and again, it wasn't the first time like where me drinking like changed my behaviour to the point where, like you say, I probably wasn't the nicest person to be around because I'd be arrogant. I'd just want to do my own thing. Wouldn't listen to anybody.
But at the time, if you were anything like me, you thought you were being the life and soul of the party, and that everyone else that was kind of going, maybe calm it down, George, or Jimmy. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh no, I'm fine. Do you know what I mean? But you're absolutely out.
This is it. I'll still get like people are laughing, and to a degree. But then, say the person I was with, or like the closest people with us, like are different when it's like the lads, because you're all sort of egging each other on. But say if you're with a partner, either you're embarrassing them tenfold, like you don't even realise, you're telling stories that you really shouldn't be telling at that point. Or, like you say, you're just becoming argumentative. Yeah. And that could be with, staff and wherever you're at. That could be with just another, punter out in the club or whatever. Which I'm not an argumentative person. Never have been. I'm
one of the loveliest guys I know, George.
Yeah, what I mean.
But I know you in sobriety and recovery. Yeah.
And this is the thing. It's not like I with like me friends I would be thing, but if anyone would catch me eye, or if anyone sort of thing, and that'd be fair. And again, it'd be one of the ones, because it was such a weird sort of thing for me to be like a little kick-off merchant when I wanted to be. Yeah. But again, you see other people do it, you think, well, that's all right, that's normal, that's okay. Well, we all do it, sort of thing. And then sort of, then sort of years went by, and then broke up, then had a year of just solid drinking out and about again, as you do, and then got into another relationship, and again I've got into this pattern where it was just all or nothing, in terms of as soon as I'd have that first one, it was all bets are off. Then I was out for the night. I'm getting, but it doesn't matter if I was sat at home, if I was having things. I drink to get pissed, and there was just no two ways around it. That's the only reason in my head to do it. It wasn't like a thing, just have a nightcap or something like that. It was like, well, we've started now, might as well. That was the sort of mindset to it. Yeah. Which, again, when you're in, comfortable quarters and everything, you can kind of work it out and everything, and life in certain ways are going all right. You're sort of keeping some plates spinning, so you think, well, this is manageable, and you say, you're functioning to a point. And then when it starts to shift a bit, And then what I noticed, and this was, the scariest, well, one of the biggest, scariest things was that my body was starting to give out in some ways, which I'm not going to go into too graphic detail on some of it, but things were happening, and I was waking up in the States, and I was like, this is getting really bad.
Because you're still kind of mid 20s at this point, maybe 27
like 20,
or something.
26, 27.
Yeah. So that's, you're like, I'm a young guy, this shouldn't be.
I've gone past the sort of thing of like, I'm early 20s now. I'm coming, especially when you're seeing people around you who are in like, long-term relationships, buying houses and all that stuff. And I'm still living in my parents, and I'm waking up in my own whatever. Not a great headspace to be in at that point. But again, you don't. Well, maybe it was the vodka that time. Maybe it was the gin. It was the wine. It was the wine that it was. So what I'll do, I'll sub that out. I'll just stick to pints.
Or I didn't eat food. Or
I ate too much.
You reason with yourself with all these different things, don't you? Yeah.
This is it. So you start doing all the mental.
Can't be the alcohol.
No. It couldn't have been that.
Like, not just the alcohol. It's something else.
It's what it was. It was the curry I had 2 nights earlier. That's where it's all stemmed from there. Or I had a bit of a head cold in the week, and maybe I wasn't feeling right. It was like that couldn't have been the quart of vodka and nectar sort of thing. So it was all these different things were sort of starting to swirl around my head. And then where it started to get to a real sort of crux was, it was not long before COVID. So I'd managed to get a visa to go to Canada. So I was all sort of set for going there for this. I was with my partner at the time. So I was going to do 5-6 months, and then we broke up in the January, and then it was like, right, well, I'm just going to go out there for however long I see fit, sort of thing. Originally 6 months, it might go a little bit longer, but at the time, again, I'm just going from blackout to blackout to blackout, because now where my drinking had got to is that when it got to a certain thing, my head was just fried, and you always have that thing, and that people call it anxiety, whatever you want to call it. That next day, the dread that would sink in, and what was happening was then I was finding that it would not just be the one day where I couldn't leave the bed; it could be 2 days, or everything was sort of like feeling like the walls were closing in. Yeah. Mentally, I was shot. Because I was then I started to sort of you sort of assess your life a little bit, and you thought, well, I'd gone to uni, got my degree, did all this, had all these sort of plans and dreams and all this stuff to do it. And I thought, well, here I am coming up to, 27.
Yeah.
And nothing's going right.
Where are you working at this point?
So I'm still at the same place. So I managed, like, say, by hook or by crook, I managed to sort of keep my professional life, like, well. But, performance-wise, probably was starting to go thin because my head was starting to go west. I was very, I think the best way to describe it was very scatty, I couldn't relax. Nothing could settle.
You're coming in and doing the bare minimum, if that, at work.
Work-wise, I'd still because work was an escape. Work for me was an escape. I could sort of switch. I could switch on. And go, right, this is what I could identify something then. But when I got home is where I'd start to get really scatty within myself, and I couldn't, nothing. I couldn't watch I couldn't sit down and watch a film. I couldn't sit down, or even I love music. I couldn't listen to music without my head going to really sort of just dark things. You're this, you're that, you're everything else.
Yeah. And was your drinking habits at this point, before we get to the Canada bit? Was your drinking habits just purely weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or were you having a? It was
becoming bigger and bigger, so I'd start having more in the week, and like you say, and then I'd be getting, drunk in the week.
Was it? And would this be going out or drinking at home? How was that kind of transpiring?
More, well, bit of both really, because then if I have something, I could have like a little bit at home, then I would do it then, or go to the pub or whichever.
Yeah.
And then, the weekend would just be the complete carnage thing from there. And again, when you can juggle all the plates and everything, it works. You can do it. You can make it work. But then what happened was then I'd like I said, got me a visa. I had the break up, didn't take it well, and sort of just basically fell, bottom of the glass. Did the old cliche, just went straight down that route.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, I'll just, because I just felt awful about myself. I thought, well, the only time in my head where I felt relatively calm or relatively confident, which is weird because I'm a very confident guy, but I completely lost my self-confidence. I thought, well, it was when I've got a drink. But then I've got to a point where for me to even feel a real buzz, I'd have to get in 5, 6 pints deep, 7 pints deep. And then it's the train had left the station at that point. So I just keep going and going and go. Didn't want to go home because the worst thing I could do is go home and then be on my own.
Be in your own thoughts.
Yeah. So I would do anything to keep everything going forward. And it wasn't out of, I wanted to be around people. It was just, I needed another drink, but also I just couldn't bear the thing of this ending and then the next day coming in and having that like despair feeling coming over us, and it's just a horrible place to be.
So Friday, you'd pretty much be out, and that would be the weekend until like Sunday.
Yeah, and then I'd sort of recuperate from there, and then like say it'd feel rough for probably the first part of the week, and then I might have a like midweek if the football was on.
Yeah. Which for someone in their 20s to be, and I was the same. Like I know people now, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm in my 20s, don't get hangovers," because they're not caning it as much as we were, and it's like for being that rough on a Monday, Tuesday, and then by the time you get to Wednesday, you're kind of all right, and then it's like, well, maybe have a glass or two on Wednesday night, and then Thursday it's like
it reshuffles again, and then you like say you start getting to this place where, I got to, in my head. I started I think the sparks were starting to click, where in terms of a lot of the things that had happened, in terms of, I was frustrated in terms of I had no money. I was frustrated that I still didn't have my own place. I was frustrated that, a lot of like opportunities or things I just hadn't taken because I feared failure or whatever, relationships, and all of it. I could start looking at it and going, well, what was the common denominator in a lot of my decision making? And it was, I was either pissed, I wasn't there because I was gone. I did not know where it'd be. So then I got to around about March time, and then obviously COVID happened, and then everything went into lockdown. So Canada just went complete on the back burner.
Right, okay.
Obviously, Canada wouldn't let anybody in.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. So what am I going to do now? So then I thought, well, because really the Canada thing, a lot of it was just an escapism. I just wanted to.
Well, it's geographical, isn't it?
Yeah. I wanted to start afresh somewhere else, and see what would happen for it. But I kind of felt like I'd almost like my chapter had closed on the island. Like I failed on a few things, so I need to start somewhere else. In my head, I thought, well, that makes logical sense to cart myself all the way around, despite the fact having a lot of emotional baggage that I had not even attempted to really resolve or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then,
but the thing we think is, and it's like, and I did many geographicals from Cambridge to Manchester to London to here, then back to London, and it was like the common denominator was that my head was still fucked.
Yeah.
And I was still following myself to these places. So there wasn't any new fresh start at all.
That's it. You sort of convince yourself and like, oh, this will work, and And then what I found was that like around that time as well is that again every night out was ending in the same thing. I get the one-arm walkout from the bouncers. I'd be shoved in the back of a taxi. I'd be arguing with someone, and it was just getting like so. My behaviour was. I just becoming somebody that I really didn't like, and I really started to hate myself because I thought, well, maybe that is just me, because maybe then I am just an argumentative person and all this stuff, and you really start getting into that cycle of that self-loathing. And thought, well, I'm great when I have the first in my head. I'm great when I have the first lot. It's the last bit that where I've become a bit of a prick, and which is true to a point, but then like you say, there's no that off switch just doesn't exist. Yeah. And then you start, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're always going to keep going back to that place.
Yeah.
And then when...
and how are your relationships with like friends and things like that? Because I'm guessing that did you have one or a couple of friends that were doing exactly the same as you, or were you kind of the only one that was just going?
No, so with the lads, we were always like we were quite big like drinkers, and that. Yeah. I think like 90% of Manx lads, it's just because it is a very big drinking culture.
Well, what is it they say? Like 60, 70, whatever, 80,000
alcoholics clinging to a rock. And yeah, I definitely.
And I used to laugh at that when I first
I used
was
to wear it with a badge of honour.
Absolutely.
Damn right it is.
That's us. Yeah.
Definitely, I never thought it was like a problem.
Yeah.
And then what was happening was then people started calling me out on my shit. And that's when it started, because I'm very people orientated.
Yeah.
So when I'd be I'd be recounting, like I say, stuff. Because one thing it always, no matter how bad whatever had happened was, I would try and like tell a story, going like, I'm always like make light of it, because I thought, well, if we're laughing about it, then it can't be that bad. And that was kind of my mindset too. If I can flip it in that way, then it's okay. Then life is good. But then what I found, and maybe it was the delivery, I don't know, but it was some things just weren't landing, and it was more a thing of, well, that's just embarrassing, George. Well, that's your fault. Well, why are you always arguing with the bouncer? Why is it always you? I've heard this story before, and that started to that was happening more and more, which to the point where it was like, oh shit. Okay, so then you think, well, I'm not going to tell anybody then what happened, and I sort of keep it more insular, because that's their problem. Well, you're not fun anymore because you don't find this. In my head, this stuff kills, and to some people, they would still find it like, oh, what you like,
you'll find the people that will find it funny. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Or they may have saw like the things, but they didn't see the sort of aftermath to it of the when I got home, or trying to get me in a taxi, or all that kind of stuff. The parts that are missing to the story that tell the full picture, where somebody who was there were like, yeah, no, that was bang out of order how you were, and you're like, oh, okay. And again, you're not really reflected on it as much then. And then what happened then? I'd got into, like I say, me and a friend, we had sort of a little bit of a relationship on and off. But one of the big primary factors was the drinking. Huge primary factor, because I remember going out. We went out for.
She was a drinker as well.
No.
Right.
It was my drinking. It was my drinking. So we gone out for like a date night, and we've just gone out on the quay, and then it's like the thing on The Simpsons where it's like insert scene here. And next thing, I remember trying to pour myself a drink at Jack's behind the bar.
Oh.
And then, but I don't remember, nothing. I was in between, it's just complete blackout, then getting thrown out of there. And then when we woke up, we ended up back in hers. And I, again, had no recollection. And I thought the night had gone all right in my head, because I didn't really know what had happened. I was like, how you doing? And it's absolutely furious, as you would be.
Yeah.
And it turns out we'd had 3 taxis to get home, because one, I think we tried to, for some reason, I said, we'll go back to mine, but then I'd lost my keys. Then I fell asleep on top of my dad's car. Milkman had to wake me up. Then we had to get another taxi to where I thought my keys might be. Then we went back. Then I fell out of the bed, and then I thought, all this stuff is just, but no recollection whatsoever. And then you think, what am I doing? And then again, I remember then sort of making a bit like a pact, going, right, now that's it. Now I'm sick, and I was sick of drinking. I was sick of being the way I was and behaving the way I was. I was just completely fed up with it, and I was like, no, that's it. I'm turning a leaf. I'm not doing it. And I think I lasted about 3 days until I went back up to watch. I was up at the pub watching United, and I was having a couple of 0 beers and everything. Do you know what? I was taught, I've got a plan.
Mm-hmm.
If I stick to the 1 and the 2, I'll be fine. This, and I thought I'll put a limit on it, or I'll only drink that. I thought this will work, and that lasted for about a week until the next incident came along, and then the next thing, and then it just so that all went Pete Tong. The next 5 months were a complete write-off. I have no real clear recollection of what I did. I know it was a lot of drinking. I know it was a lot of just one disaster to the next, and everything was just falling around us. And then,
what are we still in kind of COVID territory?
COVID lockdown had ended. So really, in the weirdest way,
when the first lockdown,
the first lockdown had ended around about June, so on the Isle of Man, July, I think. Somewhere around that. And I remember, like, weirdly, when the lockdown was lifted, I started getting this real horrible anxiety, which you'd think would be great because you could see everybody again, happy days and all that stuff and thing. Obviously, the weather was really nice. I got fit. I think I was probably in the best shape in my life. Weirdly, at that point, I was just kept, like, walking everywhere. But the biggest thing I had was, oh God, I'm going to have to do all this again. I'm going to be arguing with bouncers. I'm going to be getting in trouble again at night out. I'm going to be doing this because I knew what was around the corner.
You knew what was going to happen.
I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I mentally, I cannot keep doing this. I was so broken before lockdown kicked in. I was on such on my lowest thing. I'd actually ended up going on to antidepressants because I got into this sort of real, like, say, spiral of where my thought process again. And again, not one point that I think, so I'd got to this place where, like, everything was sort of conspiring against us. And, so the next, probably about July to about the October time was just a complete write-off from there. And then the back end, like, I can remember, like, my last, like, 5 real binges, I can remember them weirdly well because I think they were getting more and more worse as they were going along. Like, I guess I really, like, a friend's wedding, make a complete ass of myself and all, and then, like, say, on nights out with work and falling out with some of my nearest and dearest, and again start getting into just arguing with everybody who'd listened to me in like a kebab house at the back end of Douglas and everything, and with people, like, say, who knew me in a work capacity, so, like, and people who knew me from, like, way back when as well, but were really a bit like, what are you doing? Like, sort of like we're not kids anymore. This is absolutely stupid. Like, what are you playing at? And then it like, sort of, it just came to a crux. I had one last night out where at the start I made a promise, again, 1,000 promises. This time will be different. I will limit myself. I'm only going out for thing. I will be as good as gold and this thing. Cut, leave tie, black out. Next thing you know, I'm arguing with everybody. I have no pieces of the puzzle where everything comes together. I remember waking up that morning and I just thought, I can't keep doing this. I was getting to a point where I was dreading, like, even looking at your phone is always scary enough when you're waking up hungover anyway. Let alone whether you've done it because who to see, what to do, and all that stuff. But then you start really panicking. You're thinking, well, I'm blacking out, so I really don't know what's happening. Where the hell did I end up? Who was I speaking to? Where have I been? I have no idea. And then it was getting to a thing where I'm like, I'm legitimately terrified to leave my own room at this point now, because I just can't. I just couldn't face anything. If anyone even spoke, start feeling sick, feeling like this dread coming over. I think
the thing is, when you're taking pills because I was on citalopram, and it was for depression and anxiety and all of that, but they don't work with alcohol.
Oh no!
So if you're still drinking, and the doctors never said how much you're actually drinking, I think if she'd asked me that, we might have got to the crux of it quicker than just giving me these pills.
100%. Because like that was the thing. I lowballed it like you wouldn't believe. And then it was like, no, I'll be fine. I'll take these, and I'll be right as rain. Yeah.
And tell me, did anyone? Because this is what I've asked a few people as well. I think, like, the younger generation, including yourselves, maybe aren't or maybe the generation coming up behind you, they're not as drinking as much. And my thought is that it's because people are maybe, they've got the opportunity to video them doing stupid things. So was there any videos of you doing
yeah, plenty of stuff. And some of it funny, some of it hilarious, some of it like really thing, and like, you know, some of it, you know, it is what it is. But then some of it, you see yourself in certain stages, you think, oh my God. And you think, and you kind of look at it and you think, and some of it, I just look ill.
Yeah. But also a bit of an out-of-body experience, because you're like, I don't remember doing that.
Yeah.
But that's me kind of going, and jumping on tables.
This is it. And like some of it's like, you know, again, it's all like crack relax. But then other bits you look at, you think, I'm an absolute mess.
Yeah.
And you just, and again, you're in that thing of, again, still living at home. I've had two breakups in under 12 months. So I'm thinking, well, and you're thinking, well, I'm just damaged goods at this point. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what idiot would take it on? Because I'm, you know, you just think I'm just all over the place. So that morning I woke up and I was like, because I kept again to myself, right, you need to stop. Please stop. Do this. Do anything. I wanted, weirdly, to be on the ban book on the drink, because I thought, well, that will stop me going out, because then that's my perfect excuse. I can tell people I can't because I literally can't walk in there. I've been
the ban book is, for listeners outside, the ban book's like island wide, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's for any alcohol shops.
Yeah, you can't, like pubs and that. That's your done.
So you were kind of hoping that you would get on that.
Oh yeah. I wanted that, because I thought, well, that would actually stop me doing it.
Yeah.
In my head, I thought, well, that's a logical thing to do. I thought, well,
you'd probably try and find ways around it.
Yeah, because I was just terrified of like where this was going, and I knew where it was going, and I knew, like I said, it had me, you know, the what, like say the night with in the hospital. Really, you could probably chalk that to a bit of a, you know, probably a near-death experience. Well, you look at it in a certain way, because it could have ended up in a very different way. And you know, and there's been, you know, there's countless of the times where, you know, I'd at home, and I was told these stories after I'd sort of given up drinking, or maybe I probably was told them at the time, but didn't really resonate. But where I'd come home and fell down the stairs and knocked myself out, and then my mum and dad had found us and everything, and all this stuff where I think how I didn't break my neck, or you know, there'd be nights where my mum and dad would sort of flip me on my side because they could hear me and the thing, and stuff like that, or they'd be checking on me breathing because they could hear me, like sort of thing, like, and you think, well, that's not good, and you don't realise the sort of the stress that you're putting other people through. And then,
had anyone said to you, like friends, girlfriends, family, like mum and dad, said, do you think you might have a problem? Had that ever been really broached at this point? Or
yeah, I'd had a few people say, basically, you're a mess, and you need to sort shit out, basically. Yeah. But probably not saying those words. Yeah, not to the words of you've got a drinking problem,
or you're an alcoholic.
You're a prick when you drink. You're this. You can't control what you drink. You've got like no off switch and all this kind of things, or like you say, those sort of things, and they're all.
So you think in your head, I just need to get better at that. Yeah. I need to go out and have maybe just a couple of Carlings and not the Stellas or this, but you're thinking, I can fix this.
I can coach myself.
Still drink.
I can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I thought, well, at that, because. And kind of, you know, touch on like sort of the younger generation, and our generation is the huge cornerstone to everything was binge drinking was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it is as prevalent now in terms of that binge, in terms of drinking till you're throwing up, passing out, blacking out, getting carried out of everywhere, because that was seen as a normal thing to do. That was rite of passage. Yeah. That was that sort
of... almost like you guys are the last generation that was kind of acceptable.
Yeah.
To a point, and then it's kind of
now with like say you can get it on film, you know, all that kind of stuff, and basically it's on the internet, it's on forever and all that stuff. Where we would like say that thing where a lot of stuff wouldn't it would just happen.
Yeah,
there might not have been any evidence.
No evidence
how
at all.
Bad, like how, you know, fell through a table at a pub or anything. There might be no evidence of any of that.
There's absolutely no evidence of me streaking through a field when I was about 15, 16, completely stark bollock, absolutely out my face. You know, there was a few people at school on Monday going, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
But I just laughed it off and went, you know, but if there was video footage...
Do it now.
That would... Yeah,
do it now. You're carrying that, but that's going around the aisle, everywhere.
It's gone global if, you know, if it's a really funny vid. You know, it's a meme territory,
This is it. So, you know, there's that kind of component to it. But that morning I woke up and I thought this is it. And I thought I've got two choices. I either... And I really don't know. Well, I had one choice really. I knew I had to stop, but the one choice I thought I either try and do this on my own, or I just, because the thing is, because I'm a very social guy, I've, you know, got a lot of mates and a lot of things. I thought I need to basically put a marker down to say I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. So I did a video. I recorded myself, and I was just completely. I was probably still drunk. If I was sober, I wouldn't have done it. But I was still in that headspace of, you know, what I don't really care what people think at this point. But one of the reasons I put it on Facebook and sort of confessed, like, basically where I'm at and where the problems are and what I need to do. A big part of that was accountability, because I was letting people down, but in private conversations where I'd be like, "Yeah, no, I can do this. So don't worry, I'll be all right, and I've got this." Or I'd do it to myself, or I'd say it to my parents, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I go out and I'd be with a different group of people, and then it doesn't matter then because I'm with a different cohort. But the problem's still coming back because then it's still. The outcome is still the same.
Yeah.
I thought,
and then you have to find another group. And I guess putting on social media, as you say, to kind of hold yourself accountable, it's almost like a bit of an apology to the people as well. So you're kind of like, I'm making amends.
This is it. Like, I'm going to change my shit, sort my shit out. I promise I'm going to do it, and I will do it. And I did it. And I sort of went back to bed, and I thought, what's my life now? So I thought, what am I going to do now? Because I thought, I'm 27. I've now just said to my entire world at that point that I have a drinking problem, and you know, if I go back out next week and start drinking, then I know I can't do that. Yeah, a failure.
Yeah,
which is the big reason why I did it, because I thought, well, at least then I will have people saying don't. Whereas before, I'd have people going, "Go on, you'll be all right."
Yeah.
And that was the sort of the headspace I needed to sort of shift it in. So did that, and then I was really overwhelmed with sort of response. I got loads of lovely sort of messages and people getting in touch and everything, and people just saying well done, and you know, we're just very glad I did it, and they would just be there. I think. I did have, I did have people saying, "Oh, you're sure?" No, I don't agree with you think. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of us grew up together, drank together, and we're all in that sort of mindset. It's sort of like, well, in a way, it's kind of like, well, I still do that. So why are you saying it's now a problem? It's
a reflection on them and their drinking as well.
Yeah,
if they might not quite be at the same level as you, but if you're saying, I'm at a really bad point, they might already be thinking in their head, well, do you know what? Maybe I do drink a bit too much. And if you've called yourself out on it, it makes them look in the mirror.
Yeah,
and it's quite scary for some people to do that.
There's definitely that. And also, I suppose, it's almost like a chapter closing. Because you go, well, he's now stepping away from that. And it was never a thing of I thought I was better than anybody else or anything. It was the opposite, because I knew that you all can do it, I can't, and I finally came to that thing of I'm not going to sit there and wag the finger and chapter and verse and do all that. I know what I needed to do for myself, for my headspace, for my mental health. My mental health was shot, and that was the scariest thing. I thought I really didn't. I thought at that point I won't make 30 because I thought by some way or the other, without going too thin, I just couldn't keep living like that. So I did that. And then one of my brother's friends, I think he works in social work or something in the UK. And he reached out to us because at that point I was like, what the hell do I do now? And he sort of he messaged me, he was like, oh, fair, like, well done, and all that stuff. He was like, have you heard of Motivate? And I was like, I hadn't at that point. And again, in my head, a lot of...
Is that guy on GMTV that does the fitness?
Yeah, Mr. Motivator. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, but again, like I sort of read it and I thought, well, if it's short, like sort of, if it keeps me on the straight and narrow, and sort of keeps me on there. And I arranged a meeting, and I met up with Mark there, and you know, and he sort of tells me, like, the first meeting I was there, like, sort of my skin was all like red, blotchy, all puffy face, and then
on the 1-to-1 with him, yeah,
hands trembling,
yeah,
and this was, it's like 4 or 5 days after the thing, and you don't realise in terms of what you were looking like and where you were at until you start moving away from it. And I know you've put quite a few pictures, Jimmy, of yourself when you have your thing, and you can see the difference. You're not 10 years off, you're something.
Absolutely.
So,
but it's the eyes as well. The eyes are just they're dead inside.
Well,
you know
this
what
is
I mean?
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you feel, and then you feel that sort of thing, and you know, again, you're waking up and you're seeing like sort of the yellow in the eyes and everything, and it's really scary.
That's danger. That's danger zone, isn't it?
And you think, what am I doing to myself? And you know, passing blood and all this kind of thing, and you think, this is not for a 27-year-old. This ain't right. There's a reason there's a thing called the 27 Club, and I do think there is like a thing of like whilst I feel like I was quite young, there is definitely a thing of like, well. It's not unheard of, of getting to a point of blowing yourself up before 30. You can definitely do that.
Because I guess there's that kind of juncture between being a young person where it's like you got your whole life ahead of you, and then you're like, but then it's like you've got to start adulting at some point, and a lot of people do that quite early on. Took me until I was 40. Let's be honest, but it's like, as you say, that 27 point is right in the middle of that. It's like you're not a kid anymore. Like what your friends were saying, we're not young anymore. We're not kids anymore. So why are you still going out and get completely shit faced and sod the consequences type thing?
And that's it. And I'm a very social person. I like a caring person. I love all my friends. I love my family and all that stuff. But then I would, like, when I'd have a drink in me, I would do things that would be in the opposite things that I'd want to do. I'd be, argumentative. I'd be nasty. I'd do all these things where, like, I don't want to do that. And it was hurting people around us, and I didn't want to keep doing that. And I thought, well, and you see, and a lot of it you see from like, when you reflect back on it, you see sort of relationships were changing.
Yeah.
And so I did that, met up with Mark, and then I went to my first Motivate meeting, which I met yourself.
Met you, man.
And it was like a light switch moment for us, because I thought, well, because of the big thing I never understood, because I'd struggled years and years before. I've always had a weird relationship with food. So I was a fat kid. So I was a binge eater.
Yeah.
Still am to a point. But I would binge on all, junk food and everything, to the point where I'd ballooned up to 16 stone when I was about 15. And actually, I'm not tall, so I was a little chunky. And then I'd realised then, shit, I have no control on this. So I'd actually stopped. This is back in 2009. I made a thing to myself: no crisps, no chocolate. That's it, which I still do to this day.
Well, for the listeners, I have to say, George, you're looking amazing, mate.
Thank you.
Very, very sexy indeed. But,
thank you. And I do feel like a bit like Alan Partridge when you're sort of saying about chocolate addiction, and that thing.
Yeah.
But that you sort of correlate a little bit. And I thought, well, the sparks were there in terms of the impulse and no self-control and no moderation. As I sit here toking me vape, this is that thing where you're like, well, okay, well maybe sort of the foundations were there. But you don't ever want to, because then when you think of it like a sort of drinking problem, you think of the cliche of, I'm outside a shop door with a beanie hat and a brown bag, a bottle of vodka, and it comes in all different shapes and sizes. And I think that was something where, doing what I've done has certainly educated myself. But I think it's educated like other people in the thing of like it doesn't mean that you are completely at the rock bottom element of what you perceive, what you look at. You can still be fairly functioning and still keep a smile on your face, walk out the door, hey, I'm all right, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other side, what you don't see, there's loads of different things that you know, facet into it. And I always remember Mark saying, because I kept saying to Mark, going, oh, you know, it's I was get to a point where I just lose that control. It's this, you know, when I switch to that or anything. And he's like, and you know, and I said it's after that first one. And he said something that I've always, and I've said to other people as well, when you know, if you get hit by a train, it's not the last carriage that kills you. It's the first one that's going to do the damage.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, because that point then, that's where the little voice in your head going, don't do it.
Yeah.
Used to turn off. And that was as soon as it, and that would be it. Then all the self-control.
It's the fuck it button, isn't it?
The fuck it button, yeah. And then that's the thing. And I think, and you couple it with the fact that, you know, I didn't have a great relationship with myself at that point. I really didn't. I thought, what's the fucking point in a lot of things? The fuck it button gets pressed really hard at that point because you're like, because you think, well, fuck it, this is the only thing I'm going to do to enjoy. This is the highlight of my week here.
Yeah,
and you think, well, this, and then when you look back, you think that's actually really fucking sad when you break it down.
When you're saying, what else have I got in my life apart from this poison that I get to drink every weekend and make my life fall apart? That's the only thing I've got. And
that's
it's like
the thing that's my treat.
That's what I look forward to.
And that's where you're like, well, and even though you know, like you say. And again, like compared to a lot, and that's another thing with like going to the meetings and everything. You meet people from all different backgrounds, all different upbringings, and different
ages.
Things.
You know,
all, it's a huge spectrum, and that was really eye opening because again, you sort of look at it and go, well, and there were definitely times where I think I'd sit there and think I'm a real selfish asshole because there'd be people there who had a much worse upbringing than I had. I'd cushy. But I could understand why that would happen. With mine, but then when you're doing you do your reading and you sort of thing, and you realise it's an illness.
Yeah,
it's not something that you can control. It's not something that you choose to do. It's not a choice to. Well, there's an element of choice because you got to choose to do it. But then the reaction, the chemical reaction, or what it then. The grip it then has over you, that's kind of, you're in the lap of the gods a bit there. And once you start realising that, I think that's when you can start moving forward. And that's the first step really of going, well, I've got no power on this.
And it's funny you say that there's the choice, and we do have a choice. And of course we have a choice, but we also live in a culture where we grow up with it, especially like 80s, 90s, and early noughties, where it's completely embedded within British society and Manx society, where, you know, you see your parents out, even if they're not big drinkers, you see them in this glamorous, like having a meal with friends, and there's a glass of wine, it's on the TV, all of the people in the adverts for, like, say, Bacardi or Grey Goose vodka, where they're all sexy and on the beach. So it's indoctrined into us that this is what you do in society. Yeah. You drink to have fun.
Yeah.
So even though it is our choice, it's kind of, you know, growing up when I was in school and then college and then uni and then at work, all the things that we do as adults in this country, the amount of people that don't drink is very minimal.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the kind of point that I'm trying to maybe hammer home in with these podcasts, because there is a choice, but because, and as you say, like alcoholism or whatever you want to call it, you know, alcohol use disorder, it doesn't discriminate. And because we see so many people in society and we think, oh, they've got their life together, you know, they're working as a private banker, or, you know, they're a baker, or they're a postman. But they've got their life together, but we don't know what's going on behind the doors because we're not that close to these people. Yeah. We just see them walking down the street, but we don't know what's going on behind
And again, I think
doors.
you kind of go into the social media thing because you put out what you want people to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you start losing that bit of control because then things start coming, you know, you start getting into that thing of, well, I can't keep a lid on basically my life at the moment, because as soon as all bets are off. Then I don't know where I'll end up, where I'll be, and all this sort. And when you start losing that sort of direction and everything, and you're absolutely right in terms of like the culture element to it as well, because when I was at uni and before that, Geordie Shore was one of the most popular shows, and that the whole point of that was, I used to say, go out, get mortal, shag a bird, do all that stuff, and that was your kind of like, okay, well that's a normal thing to do. And if you did find someone who didn't drink or were a little drinker, they were a pussy. That's how you looked at it.
Yeah, you thought, what's wrong with you? You're like, why are you not?
Why are you having a good time? And you think, what's going on? And then even, and that kind of thing, you get. Funnily enough, and again, I think this is a testament to the shift of everything there now. Mm-hmm. In my work, we had somebody who was temping with us, and he was just turned 18, and it was the old thing of like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to, buy a pack of fags, get a couple of drinks. This is after I sort of, stopped drinking and everything. Yeah. And, sort of thing. And he was like, no, I'm going to go buy shares. And that was his first thing to do with 18. Now he's got his own already, I think like 2021. He's got his own business and everything. Yeah. He's doing like really well. But he's chosen not to, because he said, well, I want to do really well. Now, depending how you look at that, some people are like, I don't want to do that, I want to sort of thing. But then on the other side, I look at him and go, fair play. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, well, he's almost like analysed the situation around him and looked at what you could do. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Here's option B, where you don't do that, where you can get your head down, still have fun, lead normal life, but you're just not drunk. Yeah. And that kind of thing, I thought, well, bloody hell, at 18, I never...
that foresight.
Yeah. But I don't think you could have done that when we were 18. I don't think that was I think if you would have, you'd have thought they'd have like three heads, or thinking, oh, well, something's not right, because you'd look at that as such an abnormal thing.
Absolutely. It was like you've got some kind of I hate the term, but like idiot savant thing where you're kind of, I suppose like Rain Man or something. Yeah. Autism, where you've gone for that. No, it's probably not any of those things. It's the fact is that he's just
really screwed on.
This is my life. I've got this amount of time, give or take, on this earth, so I'm going to make it count. Whereas for me, it was like, party. Yeah. I'm going to party, and like everything will fall into place, which it really didn't. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
All the thing of like burn out, then fade away.
Yeah.
Which is the stupidest mantra you could ever have.
It's ridiculous.
When you really look at it, you think, why would you do the scorched earth policy and destroy everything? So,
and most of the people that, I've said this in whatever I've said about before, but like my heroes growing up were either, burnt out rock stars, film stars, or they were dead. But these were like,
there's a glamour to it,
because they pushed the boat out, and they pushed it to its limit. But the point is that majority of them, their creativity was probably completely stemmed by the time they got really, really bad on the drugs or alcohol or whatever. Because my creativity was completely stemmed throughout my drinking career.
And that's the thing you kind of want to do, like this whole, you have this thing in your head where you want to be almost like I don't know, you have like something like a troubled genius. Well, I'm not a genius, but I was troubled. And this is the thing, I'm not intelligent or talented enough for any of that. So it's like, so like you say, doing like the sort of the fellowship side of it was amazing, really. And a lot of that was, like you say, it would sort of open your eyes in terms of that complacency element, where you'd hear stories of people who would be years or months and do fine, then have the one, and it would hearing that sort of those real life sort of stories made me sort of really drilled it into us that you've got to commit to this. This can't be just a thing of like I'm just having a summer off, and then I'm coming back into it. It's like if you want to open up that Pandora's box again, you can, but that's the choice you've got. That's the choice you've got to make. But now you have the power to choose to not do all that, and then slowly,
because that, and I know a lot of people have this moderation drinking and all that, and they can do that, and I think Motivate helps people with that. But in my experience, that does not work.
It didn't work for me. No, I tried countless times, never worked. It just, because inevitably, when something that Mark would always say is play it forward.
Yes.
And it might not be that first time you do it. The first time you might be all right. You might be, okay, well, I only had a couple. And that thing. Then give it a couple of weeks, and then that little voice in your head saying, don't do it, sort of dims a bit. And go, well, what's wrong with 4 or 5? Or what's wrong? And then it starts to build and build. And you think, well, I don't want to do all that again. I really, I'm tired. I was 27 but knackered.
Yeah.
So then start doing that, and then gradually, you start getting, and you start having these. I found like that a big part of like recovery. There's like a lot of that like spirituality sort of aspect to it, and there's a lot of talk around that. But one of the things I found was that okay, well, I started enjoying things again in the way that I wanted to, where I could relax. I could, see like the simple things, like even just having like today's a Sunday. I'm down here. I've driven down to Greg Niche in the morning, which
at 10 o'clock, mate.
At 10 o'clock,
let's put that in there on a Sunday morning.
For that. But little things like that are great, are wonderful, because you're living your experience in life, whereas you could sit in bed all day and have a bucket by your bed and everything, and you do all that. You can. I don't want to do that anymore. I've done all that. Time and time again, I've done all that. I've done the hard yards. I don't want to go down that road again. And then gradually I started getting the control back in my life, because again, a lot of the stuff where it'd be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, no matter what I do, I'd somehow manage to fuck it up. Well, suddenly the fuck ups weren't happening, because now the big common denominator had diminished. Don't get me wrong, there's still things I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes. You make bad decisions and stuff like that. But at least you can own your shit. Yeah. And you go, well, I know exactly where I went wrong there. Or if something happens that's bad, you go, well, it is what it is. It's kind of out of my control. And you kind of accept the things you cannot change and all that stuff. You can do all that.
Yeah. But you also have the memory of it. So it's not like something that you've got the full kind of capacity of knowing what you did and where you went wrong, rather than trying to come in with not all the full kind of arsenal there.
Exactly, you're coming in with half a story, and you sort of, and the thing that what it does as well, a lot of it teaches you how to reflect a lot better and let go of a lot of like any bitterness you had, or things that opportunities that you didn't quite take, or situations that didn't go your way, and instead of them hanging on to you forever, suddenly they start to flitter away, because you think, well, that's happened now. Like life's like this now. You start, moving forward, and then gradually from there, like you say, managed to move out finally from parents' house.
Sorry, going back, you did start, and this is what completely, amazed me and astounded me when obviously we'd meet in in the groups and all that, in the rooms. You were still going out. Like, I think you went to stag do maybe within your first 3 months.
I did. It was one of my best mates' stag do's, and one of the things was, and again, another part of the reason why I put it out as publicly as I did was, well, the cards were on the table then. Yeah. So one of the things I didn't want to do, and was the biggest fear of like stopping and doing all that, was either losing friends or losing my social life, because I'm a social person. I'm an extrovert. I need that. Yeah. And I love all my mates. I love all my family. I love like experience. You can still have a good time and do all this stuff. And I didn't want to like just sort of hermit myself away, because that would be for me personally, that would be the opposite thing of what I'd want to do.
Probably affect your mental health even worse.
Yeah, big time. So one of the things is like, well, how do I do this sort of thing, and how do I sort of navigate it? But because I'd kind of put it out there, and I had a lot of people in my corner, I had that sort of support. People would talk to me about it, and then you have that accountability. You're thinking, well, I'm here now. If I want to have disappoint other people, but mainly really disappoint my fucking self, is I can do that. So I'm now putting myself out, and don't get me wrong, the first, I would say, year of doing like meeting up with people, I would have this like really anxious feeling of, I felt you do feel like people are watching you, or you kind of feel like you're a bit of a spare part, or you're missing out a little bit in terms of, well, because the night sort of descends off and people go off out to 2, 3 in the morning. But I think getting my car at 10 or whatever. But then in a weird way, like then you'd sort of wake up the next day and go, "Oh, I had a great night."
Yeah.
Up until that point, I had a great night, and that was always the part that I'd never have in, like, particularly in the last probably 3 or 4 years of drinking, where I'd have a good night, and then it would go horribly wrong at a certain point, and then at some point you could literally bookmark it and go, at that point, the memory file is gone.
Yeah.
And it's and then at this point, we're all, and I ruined it, and it'd be that self-loathe. Why have I done this again?
Yeah.
And then you sort of take that out, and one of my best friends, he's only ever drank twice, I think, and he was always sort of thinking, like, we were always like, go on, have a drink.
Well, see, he would still be coming out with you guys, but just never.
So he was like a real big inspiration, because I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it, sort of thing. So I stick with, and we've always still are, like, still like really tight and everything. But I'd look at him and go, well, he's just himself.
Yeah.
And and
he's not needing the alcohol to make him, because I always used to think, well, I'm much funnier when I'm drinking and I'm a much better person. Actually, it's the complete opposite. Do you know what I mean? But when you go out sober, it's like, well, people are actually enjoying your company for who you really are.
Yeah, exactly. And you're building up that stronger bond. Because you're speaking to someone, and you're holding the conversation a lot better when you've got a load of drink in you. After a certain point, either you're chatting shit, or you become very quiet because you're like, my head is spinning, and you're not probably the most social person, or you're becoming belligerent, or a bit of a
you're
prick.
repeating yourself.
And you start going, you're getting like really opinionated, but you're like, instead of just let it drop with a thing, you're like, no, let me tell you this. You're like, oh my God. And so, and we all love him for him.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll just do that. Like that makes, and obviously meeting all you guys and striking up a really quick bond with all of you guys, and we were all in that room completely sober, but most time, and we'd all get on with each other for our personalities, for who we are, and it wasn't like a thing of like, it was never, and that's one of the best things I found about CA and NA. It was never a thing of, well, I had this and I did that, so I therefore have more of a thing. We all would like share the commonalities in the stuff.
It was the similarities rather than differences,
and that's the thing that it did unite us a lot, because there was a lot of things where some people would share something and I in your head think, never really did that, but then there'd be other things I'm like, oh my God, and it would be like the first time I'd ever heard anybody else saying what my brain had been saying to me for 3-4 years going, and it would just make sense. So you have that sort of thing going, oh my God, light bulb moment. I hear things from yourself, I hear things from other members where I'm like, wow, okay, I've never heard it out loud before, because I might have said it to myself, but I've never heard anybody put it in that way where I go, I can really completely relate to that. Yeah. And since then, what I've, again, and being quite open and honest about my recovery, I don't hide it. I'm very honest with the like thing, and if I meet new people now, like I they ask, I sort of say it, just sort of, I'll tell it in my way.
It's part of your life, and that's the thing, and there's
it's a part, it's a thing where it happened. I don't regret any of it, because if it hadn't happened in the way it had, I wouldn't have come to the conclusion of where I was at that point in time. So you've got to look at it in everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And then,
you've learned from it. And I mean, that is one of my questions later on. Would you go back and change a thing? And for me, it's not, because I wouldn't have this learned experience and life experience that I do.
100%. And it might have been one of the ones where it would happen 10 years later. It might happen. It might never have happened.
Yeah.
And it's one of the ones, I had some great experiences. I met some wonderful friends that I'm still really good friends with now. And, yes, there was a dark side to a lot of it and everything. But when you're in the other side of it, you can kind of, you take the battle scars and go, well, it's made me who I am. It's made me a lot stronger.
Yeah,
I can handle a lot of things. Like I say now I've got, so I met, obviously, my partner, Hannah, like we worked together while I was drinking and obviously being sober. So she's known from day dot, like what it's all about. and obviously we're living together now. We have a beautiful baby girl.
I know,
and everything.
I know.
And,
so made up for you, mate.
Yeah,
That's
and it's those things where, like, if you'd said to me, because I'm coming up to 5 years, 5 years ago, this would be me reality now.
Yeah.
Never would have. It wouldn't have happened, or there would be some sort of, to touch wood sort of thing, but like some like twist in the tail in there where it's something would have to go really wrong because I either don't deserve it or that's just the way things are. And things have still gone wrong. Things have still happened because that's just life. But you can manage your way through it, and you can deal with it, and you're not then going, well, I'll just go and get pissed, and that'll solve it. It doesn't solve anything.
Solve it for an afternoon, and then you're back to square one.
This is it, and then having like and Hannah's like you were just saying about your partner there as well. Not really a big drinker.
Yep.
There's never really been an issue for us where, like, if I go out and don't drink, like, Hannah would never sit there and go, oh, well, you don't think it's a completely thing. But she seen me in a kebab house arguing with people drunk. So she's been very honest with saying, I would not have gone out with that person.
Yeah.
And I was not interested in that person. And I was like, fair enough. And that's, there's that thing, love me at worst, love me at worst. Well, no, sometimes the worst is too low a bar. Keep it there.
Keep it there,
Don't go back to that.
Yeah.
And if you keep that sort of those things in check.
Yeah.
And then since, like, sort of going into recovery, like, the parents have been, they've always been amazing, but, like, sort of they've shared a lot of stuff in terms of, like, how worried they were, like, when they were drinking, and sort of the pride and sort of seeing me turn it round and everything. Because I think at that point, my mum, she, very honest, one day was saying, like, you think with you got all this potential.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything.
You're not doing anything with it.
You're just pissing it up the wall, and you're not living life. And I wasn't. I really wasn't. Like, just getting to that thing. You're just sort of trudging through the day and trudging through the week, and you think, if I can get through a week where I don't have like a point where I'm at, I'm at a breaking point mentally, I've done all right. That's not a success. That's not a good guide to life. I wouldn't recommend it.
And then, like me, before you know it, you're 30, and then before you know it, you're 40, and you're still in the same kind of boat. And do you know what? Like, sometime when I saw you coming through, and I thought, I'm 40. Yeah. George is just coming up in 30, and I'm like, and I reckon for maybe a split second there was a pang of jealousy that made me think, wish I'd done it then. But you know what? Nah, not now, because I've still got this now. When I'm 40 and my life's completely changed around, and like you, like people, I've spoken to people from my 20s, and I said, did you guys notice that I was? And they were like, oh yeah, we kind of knew that you had a drinking problem, but we just thought that was who you were, and that was what defined you, and because we thought you knew that's what you were, like, just, this kind of just
you were a lush.
You were a lush, a complete lush, an absolute, for want of a better word, a beautiful loser, and it was like, I'm just rocking my way through life as this alcoholic.
And I'll burn the bridges as I may.
Rock and roll, but I was like, oh, right, okay.
And that's the thing, it's and I find that as well, and I don't know for you, Jimmy, like, I've had, like, people, like, who, as far as I'm aware, haven't done any sort of recovery or anything, but have reached out to us with issues or whatever, and I'll always be there for them. I'll always sort of make the time, talk to them and everything. But it really opened my eyes, because suddenly then you go, and then you have that moment, you think, I didn't think, I never knew that, and you're like, well, that's the same thing that you had to get, and then you go, oh my, and like you say, all you can do is share your experience. You can share your experience. I never think lecturing is the way forward in terms of that, because
we would never have listened if someone had said to us, "Oh, you've definitely got an alcohol problem or a drug problem. Like, you need to stop that now, otherwise your life's going to be in the pits." Like, no, I wouldn't listen.
I wouldn't listen, and they'd be like, "That's your problem, not mine." And then because the universe revolved around us at that point, again, you sort of assess it and go, "Well, actually, you are one speck on a big blue ball, and that's the thing." You try and make the best of what you've got. You can't be an idiot all your life and then expect things to just be peachy. It doesn't work like that.
No.
And it's been great having like conversations with people who, you've had sort of things, like similar issues and everything, and you can see like definitely like they've done their own sort of bit of self improvement and everything, which is amazing. The one thing I've always said, like I'll never sit there and go, I'll like respect if they decide to then go, right, I'm just going to go back to having like one. I'm not going to go, you can't and mustn't do that. And this is the perils of it, because it's your own experience, and it's some people have different. You're wired differently. Some people might be able to do that. Yeah. That's fine. They might come to it and go, actually, that doesn't work. They might come back and say, well, you know what? I tried that, didn't work. I'm doing this. If I sit there and sort of wag the finger, the like you say, it's like the naughty teenager. Yeah. You're going to do the exact opposite of that, or you close the door to that person because they go, well, he's been a bit of a prick. He's got on the case about it. Yeah. And to a point, sometimes at work, and maybe some people that you do need that sort of by the shoulders sort of like thing, and maybe, but
as you say, everyone is different, because on the island we've got like there's AA, which didn't really work for me. Then there's NA and CA, which really worked for me. But I was doing SMART as well, and SMART is different for a lot of people, because they've got this kind of recovery is individualistic, and not everyone is on. There's like a scale, and where kind of, I suppose yourself and me are like at one far end of the scale, but there's people further along than that. There's people that I met a guy in an AA meeting in Hull who had drank boot polish. So he had burnt this down in a pot, and because it was the only thing in the house, and he knew there was alcohol in it. Yeah. Absolutely wrecked his stomach lining, and but there was no way that I would drink that or try and drink that or eat it or whatever he did. But I was drinking mouthwash at one point because there was alcohol in that, and it's like, but then there's someone that I knew who she would only have a bottle of Prosecco to herself, and she's very slight little. She'd have a bottle of Prosecco to herself on a Friday night, and that was the only drink she would have all week. But if some circumstance happened that she couldn't get that bottle on a Friday night, or, she started feeling herself a little antsy, and I was like, because it's an addictive drug. Yeah, so even whatever lower level of addiction you've let yourself get into, like I'm not saying you're dependent on it, but your body's going to recognize when it's not getting that intake.
100%. And that's the thing when Mark pointed out to thing with, because I always thought just behind this tremor normally. Yeah. Now they don't.
No, but funny that, isn't
steady as a rock. But I just thought, I was jittery hands, whatever, nervous. But then when say Mark was saying you coming in, and that kind of thing, you think, okay, well, there's stuff that's going on internally that you don't even realise that is happening. And I think now I do think, and I think with the younger generation coming through, I do think that a lot of that, say the binge drinking, that sort of mindset, and maybe it might go in cycles. It might be in another 20, 30 years it comes back in vogue. I don't know. But I do feel like that's ebbing away a little bit. Yeah. And I think a lot of it as well, because you can see, like a bad decisions, and you think you're one step away from losing you can lose your house, you can lose your job, your relationships, and all this stuff. There's so many different things that can be at stake, really. And again, when you're young, you don't realise that. But when you're older, you start to think these are the ramifications to it. And I think
sorry, go on.
So, and I think as well, now there's a lot more sort of education around it. I think it's a lot more. I think you're having a lot more say public figures talk about it. They'll say I've got Tom Holland. I think quite recently he said he's got a drinking problem. And again, you still see some comments, sort of thing of it's nothing, sort of thing, because people will try and sort of go
diminish it.
Diminish it. Go, that's a low bar. That's nothing.
Yeah. But then you look at Tom Hardy, who was an absolute wreckhead.
Yeah, and, this is it. So it comes in a spectrum, and you have I love Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
he was. You know what I mean? And he sort of
Anthony Hopkins has just got 49 years sober under his belt.
Yeah,
he's the 2nd of January, I believe, because I think he wanted to wreck it for 1st of January. It might be a couple of days before.
one
last hoo-ha. So he must have been in, I think he was in his late 30s, so, you know.
And this is the thing, I think once you start looking at that and you think, well, look at all these people, it doesn't then mean that their life just stopped and it just, that was it, they walked away. It was like, if anything, they went from bigger to better things.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper, his career really took off after he got sober. I think Brad Pitt, similar as well. Yeah. They weren't really doing much. They were in the public eye, but then they just went like Interstellar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is it. Crazy. You get your thing in check, and you start like looking at it from a thing. And I think one of the things that I find that now as well, and again, whether probably we would say like so snowflake, whatever you want to think, but I do think there's a lot more like empathy for you think if someone's struggling, and I think especially for us as like lads, there's the whole thing of like, and especially now men's mental health is a complete different ball game now. Still a long way to go, but people talk about it. People are at the lowest. They will talk to the lads, not as much as they should.
No, but they are opening up.
They are opening up. It's getting there, and I think the more those kind of conversations happen, people start making this sort of common denominator link, saying, "Well, alcohol is a depressant." There's no two ways around that. It is. It's a fact.
It's a fact. Yeah.
Make the link. And go, well, maybe I stop that or I moderate that. And see what the difference is. Try it, and I know a lot of people do like say dry January is like quite a thing, and people will speak to me about it and go, "Oh, I've done dry January," and I'm like, I don't never feel things. And I was like, "Oh, that's great." I mean, how do you feel? And like, "Oh, I feel really good. I've lost a bit of weight. I feel really clear in my head and all that stuff." And they might go back to it, sort of thing, and that's fine. But at least you can see the benefit at it somewhere. So maybe and whether you ever get to a thing of going, well, okay, or maybe at some point you just go, well, I'll just do that.
I'll just do that and give it up. I mean, the thing is, like, sometimes you hear about people doing the dry January, and I see it on friends of friends on Facebook, and it's like, oh, I'm on day 9 or day 9 or day 12, and I'm really struggling. And it's like if you think of yourself as not having a problem with alcohol and you're struggling to stop something for 1 month, then that's where you need to have like a word with yourself, because like you should be able to give anything up for a month, unless like even things like chocolate and all that. Like I could give up chocolate for a month. I enjoy chocolate. I like sweet things. But I could give it up for a month. I know I could. But if you're really struggling to give up alcohol, which you're saying you don't have a problem with for 1 month, then it's like.
And that's the thing, and you sort of it's like that gun to the head sort of thing of going, what would you rather? And you think, well, truthfully, you know the answer. Deep down, you know what the answer is. It's like they, and that's you've got to have a vice. You've got to have something.
Exactly.
And that's something that I do want to quit. I do want to sort that out and everything. But I think sometimes with especially you've got to get to that mindset first. If you try and force it and go, right, I'm just going to do some people can and just go think, but I think you've got to almost get to that foregone conclusion in your head, go, right, enough now. And you get to that thing. I know one of my friends, she stopped smoking, smoked for years, but she Alan Carr.
Not
a comedian.
No smoking guy.
It's it. But and she was saying that actually the book, it wasn't ever like, it's not, smoking will kill you and all this stuff and everything, because all that anyway. Anyone who smokes knows
they know the risks.
It will kill you. Everyone knows that. But you change the mindset to it and the way you sort of see yourself and when you're doing it, and it's that shift. I remember reading a book in recovery, and it was the way they were describing alcohol. Instead of calling it alcohol, they kept calling it sticky poison. Just change the wording of it, because again, liver cirrhosis and all that stuff. You know the risks. But
do people know? See, this is the thing. I'm not sure I knew the extent of the risks. So I think when I was in my 20s and 30s, I knew that if I drank to maybe I was 60 or 70, I'd get cirrhosis of the liver.
Yeah.
But if I was rich enough to be like Georgie Best,
I'd get a new one.
I would get it earlier because he was obviously keen in it more than me.
Yeah.
But then in getting into recovery, so I, all it says on the bottles is, drink responsibly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, if I do that, then I'm fine. But like, whereas tobacco has all of the warnings everywhere.
All
it causes this, all the pictures, all that. They're not even allowed to be branded anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas with alcohol, it just says, please drink responsibly. So if you don't do that, then that's on you. That's your fault. Yeah. But, in being in recovery, I'm like, right, researching, it affects every single organ in the body. It's linked to 7 different types of cancers now. It causes cirrhosis of the liver, but like all these other things that are now associated with it, they don't tell people this because the government allows the alcohol companies to regulate themselves. So they're allowed to advertise how they like. They're allowed to put the costs on whatever they want. They're allowed to, they're allowed to do
tax and VAT on it as well.
Yeah. So the government's getting all that from them as well. So it's crazy. And I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. And I've spoken about it before. I can't remember her name again. I think it's like, I'm not going to say it, but anyway. So she used to work for an advertising firm, and when they would get like a big alcohol company coming in to do advertising, they would be like, ka-ching, loads of money coming in.
Yeah.
And she said she sat in a room with loads of big alcohol execs, and they were basically saying, right, we've got all our old drinkers. They're all taken care of. They're sound. We've got our kind of middle-aged drinkers. They're all good. Where we're going to get most growth is the younger people. So we need to start marketing campaigns towards the younger people. And if we can capture a few underagers, that's okay. And she was saying these are the words coming out of these executives' mouths. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's vampires.
Yeah, it is. It's frightening because and I think even now you see, and there's ways, even like we see with advertising, there's ways around it in terms of like the football and the Formula One. If you look around, it's always Heineken 0, Peroni 0. They'll put it's there, but if you're doing like what we're doing in recovery, okay, you sort of see the 0, and if you like the 0, fine. But it's still the brand. You know what the logo looks like, so it's still it's still coming in. There. It's
like
right
back in our drinking days, we would have just ignored the 0%.
Yeah.
We'd have been like, oh yeah, Stella, or this or that.
Who the fuck's drinking the 0?
Exactly. And I'd have been like, what are you doing? Because I was a booze bully as well. I'd have been like, what are you doing with that? Get on the fucking real stuff.
Why are you driving? Just get a taxi. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
And then those sort of things, it's like, there's whilst there seems as like progression, it really.
They're still making money on it because I remember the days before I gave up, and I think I bought a mate at work. It was his leaving do. And I bought him as a joke a bottle of Nanny State, which was Brewdog 0%.
Yeah.
And I think it was like maybe £1. It was so cheap because it was alcohol free. And I bought it for him as a gag because I was like, well, you can drink this at desk at work.
Yeah.
Like because it's alcohol free. And he didn't open it because he didn't want to piss people off because it's like, I'm not drinking a beer at work, even if it's alcohol free. But I bought it as a joke and then flipped to 4 or 5 years later when I was sober and I was utilising some of the alcohol free, although I didn't do it for the first year. But then I noticed that the prices had gone straight up.
Oh, the sky high, it's almost
same price.
It's the same price. They know what they're doing, and it's in terms of that. Like it's almost like trying to capture the people who, and then maybe they're acknowledging the fact that younger people or more people are inclined or more are switching off to alcohol. Are going, well, we'll give you the experience, kind of. You still like the taste, but we'll give you. But we're going to charge you the same now. So they're still making the same amount.
Still making the same profit.
It's not a charity what they're doing. It's like they're not the building.
But also, I don't think it costs. I mean, a lot of these Heineken guys will say, well, we had to make this new process in order to make the beer and then take the alcohol out of it at the end, so it costs us all that. And then they're selling the patent to other alcohol company, not selling the patent, but the structure of it. So they're like, well, we still have to do all this. It's not just making it without the alcohol. So they're saying that the process costs them, so that's why they have to do it. But it's like, right, but I'm kind of steering away from them now. I mean, I think I went to a friend's party last year, and I must have had about 7 or 8 Guinness Zeros, which I really like the Guinness Zeros.
Yeah.
But I woke up the next day and I had a little bit of it because it's not zero. It's It's like 0.5, I think. So there's still alcohol there. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm not hungover, but my head does feel a little bit fuzzy. And it was the first time, apart from maybe a sugar hangover, I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And that was like reminiscent, and it was anchoring back to that.
You start to feel a bit, and a lot of that as well, you're dehydrating yourself and all that kind of stuff.
Because it's a poison.
So you start to go into it, you think, would it? And I've had the same where I thought, no.
I'm gonna have like one or two, and then
I'm not gonna hammer because you think, it'll have no sort of effect, and it's like it will at a certain point. If you drink enough in a certain time frame, it will start to build.
But then you ask yourself, well, why am I hammering these back? Because at first, for me, I would use them as a kind of, as a kind of crutch when I was out from my anxiety. But now I'm getting used to going out and all that. It's like, I'm releasing myself back into society. So, George, I think we've answered this, but what are your thoughts on alcohol now? Do you think it still has a place in our modern society?
I think it does, in a sense of, if you know how to use it and you can use it, fine. And it's probably the same with, very controversially, probably the same with cigarettes as well.
Yeah.
I think you have to have that freedom of choice in there. People want to do it. People want to think. That's fine. I think if you do a whole blanket ban, as proven in the 1920s, prohibition doesn't work. You'll homebrew it, and then that's where you get people going blind.
And it gives the gangsters the kind of upper hand.
You put it in the underbelly, it doesn't work. I think, but what there does need to be, I think there needs to be more, education in terms of the effects, but also as well, it's sort of opening up the eyes of taking away the stigma of the fact that you don't, because there is still that sort of thing of you are still the odd one out, and depending on your personality, depending if you can own it and go like me and you are extroverts, we can sort of go we own that, whatever. Other people might not be, and other people can be more influenced, or at least which we were when that's what we were, and you, if you're still in that, you will fall down that rabbit hole. And it's podcasts like this are great, because because like you say, you sort of you're putting it out there, like you say, you're getting people on who are living their lives, who are moving on afterwards, and it's not some necessarily there's a cautionary tale in there, but there's an inspirational tale in there, because actually you go from a point where you're at your lowest ebb and you can turn it around on a 180. You do it yourself. Obviously you do it with the help of other people in there, but the driving factor in there is there's no magic wand or you've won a load of money and that's solved all your problems. It's you in your own brain.
You've got to do the work.
This is it. And it kind of shows that how powerful you can be. I think in terms of the place where it has, in terms of where it's perceived, I do think now though people are more calling out. Say you have someone who say a celebrity or whatever who is falling out of the back of a taxi or whatever. It's not the same, I would say, as probably what it was 10, 15 years ago, where it's like picture, hey, look at them. Now it's suppose it's like, this person might be struggling a bit here, and there's a little bit more of that discourse coming into it, where it's like, maybe this person isn't doing great at the moment. Instead of pointing and laughing at them, let's look at them. The mental health side is coming into it and going, what might be going on? Like I seen a thing the other day, to take a timestamp this a bit. Well, there's a clip of Jack Grealish coming out of a nightclub and I don't know, he's arguing with somebody, and you've seen comments going all this stuff, but then you see another bit of influence comments going, well, you don't know what's going on, and not excusing the fact of what he's doing, whether he should be drinking and all this stuff and everything, but you don't know where his head's at, and if it did come out in a couple of years' time that he did have a drinking problem, well, then if you were then throwing all this scorn on him at this time, or going, what you're like, well, how do you feel now at that point where he was at his low, you were kicking him?
Yeah.
So you kind of got to look at it from a different.
Because he's woken up the next day, and it's like we're saying about young people, like videoing when you're out, and you're going, "Oh my God, there's a video going around of me." He's 100%. Woken up the next day, and it's in the tabloids. Yeah. It's all over Instagram.
It doesn't matter if you've got 100 million in the bank or not. Like you're still a human at the end of the day. You're going to look at that and go, "Christ, what have I done?"
Yeah.
There's consequences to it. Some different consequences for different people, but there's still that element of.
Well, it's clickbait as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? People still love that. Gone are the days of, what was it, Heat magazine, where it was like, oh my God, look at so and so,
Lindsay Lohan
going to the shop to get fags and booze the next day and all that. Whereas, and I know what you're saying, a lot of that kind of has subsided. You can still find it as clickbait. But it's more of a pop-up website, which you're not going to go into. But I've noticed recently as well, like there's ones where they show like Nick Nolte or Kelly McGillis, and they're like, oh my God, look at what she looks like. And it's like, she's got old. Well, you know what I mean? Yeah. Stop trying to shame someone for aging.
Because I see it. There was one the other day. Which actress?
They can't all be Tom Cruise.
Yeah, there was one from like Baywatch, and they were like, I can't believe, and it was like, you won't believe what she looks like. Well, she's mid-60s. Of course, you know what I mean. Yeah, you will age.
You will age. She's not getting all of the surgery done because she's out the public eye. She's growing old gracefully. She doesn't care. Enough. Let her do that. And stop going. Yeah,
it's proper clickbait.
It's horrible.
You see an old picture of a footballer or a band. They go, you won't believe what they look like now. Yeah. Look at a picture of yourself 15 years ago.
I know.
It'll fucking depress you. You know what I mean? So it's one of them ones. It's like you look at it and you think, well, that's all part of it. And I think you do. So I do feel though you see a lot now, not so much in the publications, but you see it in the comments. They push back a bit on it now.
Yeah.
And they go, why are you putting this out there? And I think now, like, you know, social media, it's a sticky one. It has good places and bad places. Definitely, but I do think there is an essence of good in there, where there is that thing of people reach out to other people now. You can be a stranger online, all that stuff, and you know, sometimes I'll put things on like a Twitter. If I hit a certain milestone, like 3 years, 4 years, I'll put it out there, and you'll get like you can get DMs or you can get messages or likes from people that you never met. But then it's kind of like thing. It's like, well, and if I ever see anything on there, I'll like it or whatever you sort of thing. And fair play. There's a commentator I like on one of the United fan channels who's very vocal in his own journey in recovery, and I'm like, that's great because he's putting it out there. And it's like, well, it might help even a handful of people, a handful more people, and sort of thing. And you're changing that narrative of, you know, this is what it's all about, and especially around, like I say, like football culture. There is, you know, as a Scot, you know, I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of stuff in terms of there, go to the game, get pissed.
Absolutely stereotypical Scotsman.
But now I think there is a lot of that where you kind of look at it where, you know, I personally, if I go over to Old Trafford or whatever, I mean, to be honest, I mean, the way things are going, Jesus, it would drive me to drink. But like, you look at, like, you know, you see some fellas in the crowd and everything who are absolutely steamboated at kickoff. And I was that person. But then you think, and I'm now looking at it going, well, why? Like, you're not going to remember anything from the game.
What enjoyment are you getting out of the game?
You know what I mean? I was at the United Leicester game the other day, and there was two lads next to me who were turfed out before half time because they snuck a load of beers in. And I thought, what was the point?
Yeah.
You paid, you know, it's 60 odd quid now. It's not cheap. You know, and they've travelled all the way. Yeah. Jeez. And you think, what was the point of that? Could you not have just waited to half time to the concourse and everything? You know, and you sort of sit there and you think, what's the point? And I didn't look at that and look at the steward going, you know, a bit harsh. It's like, I know I'm going to think rules are rules. You know, we all broke the rules back when we were doing it, but you sort of think, you're an idiot now because you've just ruined your own sort of thing. You know, you don't know if they go off, and you don't know if there's a one-time thing. It could have been a bit, but you jeopardising everything around it.
Yeah. So, and then they might be getting in the pub, and I don't know these guys, but they might be going, like, waiting in the pub local, waiting for the game to come out at the end. They're already getting tanked up in there.
Yeah.
And then they're just ready for, because they're frustrated and they're angry because they've been turfed out. Yeah. So they've got that kind of rage like, on.
Well, even like afterwards, me and my dad and my brother went to this pub afterwards, and we were chatting about the game and everything. And my dad and brother having a pint. I'm on my zero, whatever. And but there's fellas, United fans, fellas arguing with each other, squaring each other in the toilet. And again, you sort of look at it from a different viewpoint now. You think, Well, I do remember arguing with people. I think at the end of like games or whatever, or you're still getting a thing. You think, but why? This is the thing you can't quite wrap your head around it. It's so we take it out. You look at it from almost like a bird's eye view. You think, glad I'm not doing that.
But you're the same person, and all you've done is removed that one element.
Yeah.
And you're not that argumentative person anymore.
Yeah,
so it's almost like if you go to these, like say Friday night on town, Saturday night on town, outside a pub, outside a game, at a football match, where all these arguments are happening. Yeah. What if you just take all that element out? And again, I know we're not going to be in a world where we can get rid of alcohol. Like if it was just discovered today, it'd be illegal. It'd be up there with the Class A's. Yeah. Probably worse.
Same with cigarettes. It would be all the same.
Absolutely. But what I'm trying to do is just like raise people's awareness that if you do kind of cut down and try and take that out of these elements, you're not going to have all these situations.
This is it, and it certainly, the way you got to look at it, it doesn't fix everything in life.
No, of course not.
But it gives you the mindset or the tools to go, well, here's how I'll approach it now. Because you say the old Einstein quote, we've done a million times to death.
Yeah.
But you keep trying to do it with a pissed head. Yeah. You're not going to get anywhere. You might get lucky. You might get lucky and things just work out for a bit. Mm-hmm. But the pattern repeats itself and it will come back in at some point because you've not got the foundations there for stability. And I think that's the biggest thing at the moment. That's the thing I crave now is that sort of stability, that element of especially now with, I've got a daughter. I want to make sure that she's got everything possible, and I've had the conversation. I've talked about it with Hannah and people like, what would you do if your daughter drank? And I think, well, the thing is, I've got to let her make her own choices. I have to. I can't sit there and go, well, because I couldn't or shouldn't, you can't, because she'll do it anyway. Because that's exactly what a kid will do. Because they go,
100%.
As soon as your back's turned, it's going to happen. Yeah. And then if you make it into this whole thing of, her experience might be completely different to mine, and she might be absolutely fine with it. Might just not like the taste of it. Might not do anything for it. And
again, she might be part of that. Whatever. I think they're Generation Alpha. They're calling themselves. Yeah, not calling themselves.
I can't keep up with it.
I know it's like we'll start again after Gen Z, but it's like that they will be in that element where, well, by the time she's 18, what is she?
2 now? So 16 years.
16 years. Do you know what I mean? Like alcohol situations and what we've learned about it now compared to then is crazy. So I'm a stepfather now to well, I mean, we're not married yet, we will be, but still kind of in that influential kind of position. So there's the 14, 12 and an 8-year-old, and I don't think we've told them exactly why I don't drink, but the more and more they're learning about my podcast, about my peer mentor role at Motivate. Yeah. So they're understanding. We've not actually said, listen, I was an alcoholic. They don't really like that word anymore. Yeah. But I think the older ones are starting to have an understanding of that.
Starting
to twig that this is why he doesn't drink and whatnot. But it's like, I'm not going to say to them, right, you should not drink ever because of that. Because obviously they've got a dad and they've got a mum. And I'm not going to be trying to, overshadow anything that they're saying. But I hope that I can have some kind of influence and say, if you are going to drink with your mates or whatever, you've got to do it, sensibly.
And I think sometimes the best example is just by living. It's just if you're doing it right, well, not right per se, because it sounds a bit like the whole thing, all the answers. But if you can sort of, get through and doing things and you're good to people, or you're helping people out, you feel all the attributes that you want to be and all the things that you sort of aspire to do, eventually people pick up on that, and you will have things where again, I'm sort of thinking there'll be a point obviously when she's in the teenage years where everything I'll say will be I say black, she says white, and that'll be it. That's fine. That's all part of it. And I sort of think back to when my parents have said to me about binge drinking or slow down or whatever. You listen to the bits that you want to hear, and if that's not what she wants to hear at that point, then okay, that's the thing. You'll get to that conclusion.
Yeah, if it
your own
doesn't
time.
work out in what you were going to do that weekend or that month or that holiday, you're going to go, well, I'm going to be selectively listening to what they're saying.
Yeah, so, of course, yeah. And there's the thing, and you sort of you take you get the value out of, you know, like sort of living sober. Like a lot of it is you know, before that you think, oh, it's boring and Christ, what do? You can't go to a museum every weekend, or you know what I mean? I want to read a book. Yeah, you don't do that.
You find stuff. There's life. There's life.
Your brain starts to open up again and go, oh, I love doing this. I love, you know, like getting out, doing like, say, going out like nature and all this stuff in terms of like music and everything like that. You know, keeping fit, all these different things where you took for granted that you could do it before, but then at the same time you didn't enjoy. You just the little things. I remember I was warming up for I played for Onken, and I was warming up like the other month, and mainly because I was just surprised I got picked. But one of the lads was like, "Look, you're just happy to be here." I was like, "I am, really, I am," because I'm like, you know, when I have that times where I turned up where I'd absolutely be pie-eyed from the night before, or feel awful, or you know, just having a tactical whitey before the game and everything. And you think, well, it's just nice just to be with the lads, have a bit of crack.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, you know,
no pressure.
Yeah, this is. I mean, have a bit of respite from a 2-year-old screaming down the house. You can have a little bit of that, you know, bit of me time.
Yeah.
But then you can go back and you know, go into dad mode and everything, and you know, it just opens up everything. And like you say, I hope like sort of these podcasts, like if you know, people do listen to it and go take something from it and go, okay, well, you know, even if it's moderate, whatever, if it helps, then that's perfect. That's the main thing.
Because that's it. It's not like any set rules. It's like, you know, I would say for someone that was possibly in my situation, then like, yeah, you're probably best not to drink again. Yeah. But there are other people in different situations where moderation can work.
Yeah.
So last thing, George, what I ask everyone is, would you say you regret getting sober?
Oh, absolutely not. No, God, no. It's the best thing I ever did. It was absolute. If I could put like you say, if you could ever put a pinpoint in life of going, you know, like 17th of October is, like you say like a second birthday. And I really do. I do feel that, because from that point onwards, and again, there will be trials and tribulations in life. It's all part of it. But it's that where I feel in myself, in me, and have all that, you know, self-reflection and self-relationship. I would not have anything that I'd have right now had I not made that decision at that point and carried on doing the work.
No, amazing, man. Well, it's so good to see you again, George. I know we've not seen each other for a while.
Yeah, it's been a bit of time. Yeah,
the thing is, with social media, you kind of see what everyone else is up to, and it's kind of like
in touch, but you're just not
exactly
COVID times.
COVID times again, mate. So no, thank you for coming around, man. Thank you for being on the podcast. It's just an absolute pleasure to hear your story again after all these years as well. And I do hope that it really kind of, you know, resonates with at least one person out there, which I'm sure it will. But thank you, man.
Cheers, Jimmy. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. See you soon. Bye-bye.
So that was George. Great guy, great story, great, incredible kind of, you know, foresight from a young age to be able to, you know, still maintain his life and go out and do things like stag do's and you know, and still be able to go out and party with his friends, you know, from an age like 27. He doesn't want to kind of, you know, sacrifice enjoying his life at that age. So, you know, as I say, it was quite easy for me to kind of hermitize myself, cut myself off from a lot of things, because, you know, I was 40 when I got sober, but being 27, it always just fascinated me. Like, you know, and I don't know if I could have been able to do what George did, but, you know, absolute props to him for being able to do that and, you know, continue his life without the alcohol. But, you know, it almost sounds crazy me saying that, because, you know, this is what I'm banging on about. Of course you can go out and live your life and, you know, have the fun and do all the things that, drinkers can do, but actually do it with more clarity and more insight and more happiness and enjoyment, because you're remembering it, and you're remembering the nights, and you're remembering the conversations and the connections you're having with people. So well done to George. So proud of you, man. And it's just a testament to see what you can do. Your life doesn't have to end as soon as you stop drinking. In fact, it's completely the opposite. Your life begins, and George is just pure evidence of that. So, it's all of the things that he's been able to do in his life since getting sober. He's met an absolute wonderful woman, and they've now had a little baby daughter together. He's got his own place, and just all the things that the boozing was kind of holding him back from. So a bit of a long one today. So I hope if you are still listening at this point, thank you so much. I do think it had a good flow and pace, and George held our attention all the way through. So I don't want to start doing episodes this long, but you know what? If the story and the conversation kind of makes it happen, then I'll just keep recording. It's not an issue. I don't try and keep them to a certain limit. But it was just an incredible story today from George. So thank you, man. And we'll go out and have a coffee soon. So follow, rate, review, leave a comment on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're kind of seeing my content. Do appreciate it, and it helps other people find out, if this is the podcast for them. I think Spotify's top, then Apple, and then a few others. But wherever you're listening, just put the comment, hit the 5-star review, and it will just help us out and get us to the people that need to hear these. So thanks, guys. Have a great week, and see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay sober, and stay supportive. Cheers. Bye-bye.